We need a massive education investment by the government, a complete overhaul of education. Like, this is perhaps the second most important item on this whole list of mine is education. I mentioned that the first is removing corporate lobbying and money from politics. The second one is education, because education transforms everything else. Nothing I say here is possible without proper education. We need more schools, smaller class sizes, much higher teacher incentives, salaries, and bonuses. We need to reduce standardized testing. Right now, we're testing our kids to death. These tests are very mechanical and they're testing the wrong things. They're measuring the wrong metrics for success. Success in school should not be measured by how fast you should solve a math problem, but rather you should be tested for consciousness, for love, and for development, and for your emotional IQ. That's what you should be tested for. And of course, you shouldn't be tested in some sort of ridiculous, over-the-top way where you're tested every month. Once in a while you're tested for it in a softer sort of way. But we need a massive overhaul of the education system. We need to change the subjects that are being taught. We need to end privatization of public schools. The problem with the privatization efforts of privatizing a lot of schools and creating a lot of charter schools and so forth is that what it does is it creates sort of two pools of people, those who are in private schools and those who are in public schools. Once all the rich people go to the private schools, the public schools now are no longer of any interest to the wealthy people, because the wealthy people send all their kids to the private schools. And so then the wealthy people just want to destroy and end public schools because they think it's not important. But it is important because the entire population needs to be educated in a democracy. You can't just have only the rich and the elite have good education, everybody else have crappy education. So really what I would suggest is that we need one pool of schools, no private schools, just public schools. And we need to make them really good. Make the public schools as good as the private schools. Because you know what? If the millionaires and billionaires were sending their children to public schools because that was the only option, there were no private schools, then you better believe that those millionaires and billionaires would be very concerned about improving the quality of those schools. Whereas right now, it's the opposite. They want to destroy and take resources away from those schools because, hey, my kid's in a private school, and so fuck the public schools. Who cares about those? It's very short-sighted thinking. Public school education can be very good. It can be. We just need to change the way that the public schools are funded. Right now, one of the biggest problems in America is that the public schools are funded by local real estate taxes. That means that the quality of the school completely depends on the wealth of the neighborhood. So wealthy neighborhoods have the best schools, poor neighborhoods have the worst schools. This is an abomination. There needs to be equal funding for all schools, regardless of what neighborhood it's in. And the funding needs to be significantly higher. So one of my most important proposals here is that we need to take the majority of the military budget that we cut and dump it into public schools. Extremely high quality public schools. I went to a public school personally. I went to a really good one because I grew up in Orange County, California, which is a pretty wealthy part of California. And California is a pretty wealthy part or a wealthy state relative to other states in the country. So I was fortunate to go to some really good public schools. And without them, I couldn't be here teaching what I'm teaching right now. When I think about how many millions, tens of millions of people are robbed of their potential by not having access to high quality public schools, it's a tragedy. It's really a tragedy. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. And almost no politician is seriously addressing the public school issue. You know, as much as I love some of the politicians that are out there right now on the Democratic side, like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and so forth, they have some good proposals, but they're not talking about significantly improving public schools. That's one of the huge oversights right now with this Democratic slate of candidates. And the Republicans and conservatives forget about it. They don't care about improving public schools. The education secretary that Trump has put into office right now is ideologically opposed to public schools, wants to basically undermine them and defund them. It's utterly absurd. Utterly absurd. Total devilry. And that's another one of those things, for you libertarians, what does government do well? Public education. Actually, government does public education quite well. There are a lot of public community colleges, public universities. Like in California, we have a great public university system. I went to a public university, UCI, quite good. It's not Ivy League, but quite good, quite affordable relative to Ivy League schools. So we need more of that all across the country. And I got a great public education. It's possible. It's just a matter of funding. It's not that it's difficult to do. Government can do public education. Public education is not rocket science. It's just that you have to have the will and the funding to want to do it. You have to prioritize it. If you give schools the funding, pay teachers much better, structure the curriculum properly, you're going to have excellent public schools. This is not something that's like some far-fetched utopian idea. This is already existing. There are already great public schools all across the country. They can be replicated. We also need to change how we teach in these schools. Rather than teaching content to be memorized, we need to teach more for wisdom and for discovery. We need to teach children not what to think and what to believe, but how to think. School needs to be much more exploratory, where you're discovering things for yourself. There also needs to be a lot more input and choice for the children in the schools so that they can choose their own subjects, so that they can pursue the things that they're naturally passionate about, because not all kids are equally passionate about all subjects. Of course, schools need to incorporate and start to teach mindfulness, meditation, mysticism, spirituality, yoga, and consciousness. This is absolutely central. This is the whole point of school. The whole point of school is to teach consciousness and wisdom and self-actualization. And right now, school is teaching none of it. So basically, if I had my wish right now, if I had a magic lamp and I had 3 wishes, one of my wishes would be to take all of the stuff that I teach through actualize.org and to make it freely, publicly available and taught in school. Entire classes. We need to have classes on metaphysics, classes on epistemology, classes on yoga, classes on meditation, classes on mindfulness, classes on emotional mastery, classes on philosophy, classes on psychology, classes on spiral dynamics and developmental psychology, classes on sociology. This would completely transform education. It would also make education much more practical, much more interesting, and students would be much more passionate about it because all of these subjects are extremely interesting and they all directly relate to your own life. Self-development and self-help needs to be the core of school, and everything else is a tangent. Of course, we're going to teach math, and we're going to teach English, and we're going to teach history. Yeah, we teach all that stuff, but all of that is secondary to the primary aim of school, which is to teach you how to be a conscious, wise, independently critical thinking human being. We will also teach basic life skills like cooking, nutrition, healthy eating, fitness, exercise. We will also teach business and marketing skills so that you're able to exit school and actually start your own business, for example. Basic finance skills need to be taught: how to do your taxes, how to calculate interest rates and make sure that you're not over budget and this sort of stuff. There needs to be a massive push for teaching relationships, conscious relationships, conscious communication skills, and conscious marriage skills. This would be a huge improvement to society. My God, how much collective suffering is created because in school we are not taught at all about conscious relationships, communication, or marriage. We also need to be taught about masculinity and femininity. How much devilry comes about because people don't have a proper understanding of masculinity and femininity. So many problems, so many self-esteem issues, so much demonization of the other side. A lot of toxic masculinity is popular today, the red pill movement and all this sorts of stuff, because they simply don't understand femininity. They demonize femininity. And then females could also stand to understand masculinity more. And then this also would help with LGBTQ issues as well, because a lot of those have to do with finding your balance on the masculine feminine spectrum, and it is a pretty wide spectrum. Parenting skills need to be taught, whether in school or in college, or maybe there's special community college programs you can take for parenting skills. This would be huge. We have so many parents raising children who have no basic understanding of parenting skills.